I'm probably the only speaker that will ever come into a room with you that if you actually fall asleep, I'll be impressed. And that kind of stuff. So feel free, if you want to take a little bit of a nod, kind of go for it. Who here had the best sleep they've had in the last 6 months last night? Fabulous. How'd you feel today? Yeah, it's amazing. Stuff like that. Who here has an e-reader and actually takes them to bed with them? I know there's a couple of you. Right? Gary, where are you? Okay, you guys. Good. We're going to talk about whether that's a good thing to do or not. Who here had 7.5 hours of undisrupted sleep last night? 7.5 hours of undisrupted sleep. Very good. You're a very lucky individual. Who here drinks coffee after 5 p.m.? Well, not bad. Not bad. Like that. Who here can't shut your brain off when you go to bed at night? The dimmer switch isn't working anymore, right? That's called monkey brain. And stuff like that. So we're going to talk about a few of these things here. And what Karen really talked about was so many of us have become experts at energy expenditure. And we're absolute novices at energy recovery. The good news is, with changing some of our behaviors, we can learn to sleep again because it's so important. So what we're going to go through tonight is sleep as the ultimate high-performance drug. And no, it's not cannabis, contrary to what you're reading in the papers these days. It is actually sleep, and it's very inexpensive. Like that, quite frankly, it can save you a lot of money if you follow some of the tips that we're going to go through tonight. I had the absolute pleasure of leading different therapeutic teams over the years, and one of them was in the area of mental health and the neurosciences. So I spent a lot of years hanging out with sleep specialists at sleep conferences and all this type of thing. And I was so busy traveling, guess what happened to my sleep? Right? It derailed. It absolutely derailed. So I had to make a decision in my life. And the decision was, is knowledge power or is the application of knowledge power? I knew what I should be doing, right? I had to start, I had to grow up, quite frankly, right? And this kind of stuff. I had to start applying all the knowledge that I had. So today we're going to leave you with some gems. And then you can decide whether some of these gems are going to be part of your sleep recipe or you're going to continue to enjoy fragmented and disrupted sleep, right? That and the consequences that come with it. Let's start with a couple of foundational thoughts here because it's really important that you recognize that your sleep problems don't start when you put your head on your pillow at night. They start when you take your head off the pillow in the morning. Okay, we're going to reverse engineer this son of a gun for you and this kind of stuff. It's really, really important. It's the decisions that you make, the therapeutic lifestyle choices you make during the day that result in fragmented or suboptimal sleep, right? And yet, we look at that, and then we combine that with the fact that sleep is the #1 health prevention thing that you can do. If you get that 7.5 hours, give or take, what your recipe is, of undisrupted sleep every night, the kind of health that you will enjoy is enhanced dramatically. And we've talked already, and Kevin's mentioned that health as a separate asset class, I would say it's probably your #1 asset class. Karen alluded to the fact, how can you be a good mom, a good spouse, a good employee, a good boss, if you're not having good sleep and you don't have good health, right? It all starts with here. So I'm not advocating selfishness. That's what I'm not advocating. But I'm advocating you making some serious decisions to look after yourself, create the best version of yourself, and therefore everybody else can benefit from that. Let's look at some sleep statistics, because these are a little bit alarming. Start with us guys. Men with a sleep disorder have a 2 to 3 times higher risk of having a heart attack, 2 to 3 times higher than gentlemen that sleep well, and 1 to 4 times higher risk of stroke. That should get your attention. People suffering from sleep deficiency were involved in 34% of fatal car accidents. They now define sleep deprivation as the #1 cause of fatalities as it relates to car accidents. And they're starting to talk, in some of the states anyhow, that they are going to start ticketing people if they can define the fact that you have been sleep deprived. Well, you know that pilots, they have a limited window in which they can fly, and then they have to have sleep. Same thing with truck drivers. There's a reason for that. But what about the rest of us, right? Maybe we should be thinking about that. Less than 4 hours of sleep per night increases your risk of being overweight by 73%, less than 6 hours by 23%. Metabolic stuff happens when you sleep that can help you with weight management. So we want to kind of be looking at that. And I have a number of people that say, well, you know what? I've slept for 4 hours for many, many years. I'm doing just fine. I go, for now, right? There's going to be a price to pay for that. We're going to look at that. Less than 6 hours per night doubles your risk for cancer because your immune system recharges during night, and if you're not sleeping, your immune system is getting beaten down, right? So you know, as a host, you become more of a host for these mutant cells. The World Health Organization, WHO, has deemed shift work to be a class 2 carcinogen. There's a direct cause and effect between shift work and cancer, which doesn't impress me because I have 2 daughters who are nurses that do shift work, one at the South Health campus here, and I have 2 son-in-laws who are paramedics and firefighters that are doing shift work. So we got to figure this out for them so that they don't have the consequences of this over time. And we see a lot of individuals in our clinics that do shift work and have to get this figured out, right? If you want to walk your kids down the aisle and you're a shift worker, this is something you need to pay attention to. Less than 6 hours of sleep equals 2 to 3 times more likely to suffer calcification of your coronary arteries. We'll talk about why that happens. And short sleep amounts are predictive for lower work rate and slower completion of basic tasks. Who here used to be able to read an email and get the gist of it and respond to it once, but now you're having to read it 2 or 3 times? Hey, no way? You're a good man, Charlie Brown, right? Duration of sleep is directly correlated to self-control. We're going to talk about the emotional rebalancing that takes place when we're sleeping, right? Because nobody wants to work with someone who's got poopy pants all day long, right? And if you look at that, maybe they haven't slept that well. So let's get that part figured out as well. So what is good sleep? I talked about it already. You should strive for 7.5 hours of undisrupted sleep, and we've bolded the undisrupted because that is a critical factor in your sleep. Who here, again, we had a couple that said that they had 7.5 hours undisrupted. Who were those? You've got something figured out. Share it with other people. Yeah, because it's magic. That's the pixie dust in our health life. So here is what good sleep should look like. The reason why it's 7.5 hours is because we typically go through 90-minute cycles, and you want 5 90-minute cycles. I'll just use the highlighter here so you can see your first cycle. What we do, generally speaking, healthy sleep is you drop into deep sleep in about 15 to 20 minutes. Okay? Some people a little bit faster, but that's on average. So you go here, sleep, and you drop down through your non-REM sleep cycles into your deep sleep. And then within that 90-minute cycle, you pop back up to REM sleep. You drop back down, you pop back up, and then you cycle throughout the night. Each one of these cycles has its own unique and special restorative and reparative things that are going on in your body. That's why you want to get full 5 cycles. You can say, well, I feel fine with 6 hours while you're cutting off a cycle. I feel fine with 4 hours while you're cutting off a couple of cycles. So you're not getting the health and restorative benefits that go there. If you notice here, the deep sleep is longer in the first 3 cycles and shorter in the last 2 cycles. The REM sleep is more substantial in the last 2 cycles and less in the first 3 cycles. Different things happen during REM sleep. Different things happen during non-REM sleep. It's important that you get 5 cycles. Okay? Why is sleep so important to our overall health? I hear a lot of people say, you know what, I got stuff to do and I don't have time for sleep. Who here has said that before? Who said, I'll sleep when I'm dead? Right? So we hear that all the time. And you're not sleeping when you're dead. Like, that's just a myth, right? You're dead, right? And that's all there is to it. This kind of stuff. So why is it so important? While we sleep, let's look at the top 5 things that happen that are so important to our overall health when we're sleeping. Your immune system recharges. We just talked about the fact that the cancer rate for individuals that aren't sleeping well is 2 times higher, and that if you're a shift worker, it's a class 2 carcinogen. Your immune system is getting beaten down. Pure and simple. Our muscles and bones heal. Who here believes that you get stronger when you go to the gym? Who here believes you get stronger when you go to the gym? Well, you don't, right? You create microfractures in your bones and micro tears in your muscles. That's what happens when you go to the gym. You break yourself down. It's the nutritional things that Dr. McNeil talked about, and the sleep. That's where your body actually strengthens, right? So you don't get stronger in the gym. Your cerebral dishwasher turns on. We're going to talk quite a bit about that. Our thoughts from the previous day are consolidated, our emotional centers gets recalibrated, and so much more, right? So if that first 5 aren't enough to get you thinking about good sleep, well, I may as well stop here, right? Because the others, there's a lot of good stuff. So let's talk about the immune system. The immune system triggers extra sleep when we're sick, actually, right? If your immune system is working really, really hard, it says, get more sleep. Why do you get fatigued when you're sick? Your immune system is working hard, and it's saying, get more sleep, I need to recharge. We're under siege here. Help me out, right? Give me a break, and that kind of stuff, so you want to sleep. Sleep enhances natural killer cell production. So we have cells in our bodies that are called natural killer cells, and they attack cancer and wipe out cancer. So the production of these cells is enhanced when we sleep, so you really, really want it. Another reason why, if you're not sleeping well, you're more prone to cancer because your natural killer cells are not getting enhanced. Melatonin. Who here has heard of melatonin? Right? It's the sleep hormone and that kind of stuff. Melatonin also, not only is it a sleep hormone, but it is one of the most powerful anti-cancer hormones we have in our body, and it's the highest when you sleep, right? So again, it all starts to come around, and you start going, that's interesting, right? Human growth hormone is released, which again boosts the system. So we have a much higher release of human growth hormone when we're sleeping, and it boosts the immune system. So really, at the end of the day, your immune system is being recharged when you sleep, and it's a good idea to have a strong immune system, right? It's a good thing, okay? Muscle and bone healing, okay? Human growth hormone, again, is released in the evening when we're sleeping, and it promotes the maintenance and repair of muscles and bones and replenishes the lining of our blood vessels. So this is where we actually strengthen. The gym is not where we strengthen. It's when we sleep, when the human growth hormone gets released and all that reparative, restorative stuff takes place. The other interesting thing is during the day when your blood pressure is pumping hard and you're stressed, it's actually wearing away at the lining. It's called the endothelial lining of your blood vessels, etc. So it's actually breaking them down. And if you don't get your human growth hormone released in the evening, you don't get the repair of the endothelial lining of your vessels, so they become more porous. If they become more porous, the plaque starts to stick into them and get into the lining of there, so you put yourself at greater risk for cardiovascular disease. And the reason why we're going through this is so that you can understand what's actually happening when we don't sleep well. It's really, really important, because now you have this knowledge, you can kind of say, okay, I can nip this in the bud. It's within my control to do that. The cerebral dishwasher. How many of you knew you had a cerebral dishwasher? Right? It's not a Maytag, right? It's a Sioux version, right? It's an awesome version. What's really interesting is when we sleep at night, people think that my brain kind of shuts off when I sleep, and that's just the biggest fallacy. That's a myth out there. Your brain is actually very, very active when you're sleeping, but it's doing other really cool stuff. So during the non-REM sleep, so remember, you get the most amount of non-REM sleep during those first 3 phases. The golden time for sleep, based on our biological rhythms as human beings, typically is 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. That's that 8-hour window, right? That's the big money sleep time. That's kind of what you want to be gunning for. During non-REM sleep, when you get into the deep sleep, some of our brain cells called glia cells shrink. And as they shrink, it causes a lot more space between the cells, and the cerebral spinal fluid starts flushing through. So from our neck down, who here has heard of our lymphatic system? Lymphatic system? Yeah, it's the waste management system, right? It purges all the toxins from your bodies and all this other kind of stuff. Well, from the head up, it's the gliolymphatic system. So the same thing here. And the cerebral spinal fluid is the fluid that flushes through the system, and this system is about 60% more active when you're in deep sleep. And so what happens is, when we're busy during the day, our brain, which is a very, very powerful muscle, gives off a lot of metabolic waste, right? When our big muscles down here work hard, they give off lactic acid, right? Up here, when our brain is working, it's giving off metabolic waste. One of the things that accumulates in our brain is a thing called beta amyloids. Has anybody heard of beta amyloids? Right? It's the stuff that accumulates with Alzheimer's and dementia. Right? It's one of the things that's closely associated with Alzheimer's and dementia. So when your cerebral dishwasher kicks in at night and you're purging all these metabolic waste from there and stuff like that, it's cleansing the brain, and this kind of stuff, and it's taking these toxic materials away. So you really want to sleep well, and this kind of stuff, and it's one of those things that you can do to help, avoid cognitive issues down the road. So let's talk about input consolidation. Anybody here in the tech industry? All right then. So if we look at it, during the day, we are taking in all kinds of inputs, lots and lots of inputs throughout the day. And these are stored in the part of our brain that's called the hippocampus. So you can equate that to your cerebral USB key, right? Everything's getting loaded into your cerebral USB key, the hippocampus, right? But during non-REM sleep, remember those first 3 phases where you get more non-REM sleep and stuff like that, the slow waves, because this is a deep sleep, there's slow cerebral waves there, act as a transport vehicle and a relevancy filter, and they move the data from your USB key, your hippocampus, to your hard drive, which is your neocortex. What happens if you don't sleep and the USB key doesn't get dumped out? Right? You can't learn the next day. It's hard to take new stuff in. And then I try to recall stuff. Well, it hasn't gone from the USB key to the hard drive, so I have an issue with recall, right? And you're just fogged in the next day. And that's what happens. I hear so many individuals kind of say, I haven't slept like that, and just, I just can't remember stuff as well anymore. Well, that's because you're not transferring it from the USB key to the hard drive and that type of thing. And I can't take in new information because my USB key is jammed and that kind of stuff. So this input consolidation is a really, really important part of memory, right? And your ability to absorb new information. Okay? And then there's a thing called emotional recalibration. This is where we talk about people not sleeping and showing up the next day with poopy pads and this kind of stuff. That, right? Because sleep deprivation can lead to an increase in impulsivity, risk-taking behaviors, more substance abuse, mood issues, depression, and violence. And sleep deprivation can lead to a 60% increase in emotional reactivity. The short fuse, right? Right? We've all come across people that have had the short fuse. There's a part of our brain called the amygdala. I don't know if anybody here has heard of amygdala hijack, right? That's usually when you get an amygdala hijack, that's when you want the do-overs. Oh, good God, right? Right? My tongue kicked in before my head and this kind of stuff like that. When we don't sleep, our body produces a lot more dopamine. You see that last point there, which stimulates the amygdala, right? The emotional center here, right? That we put our foot down on the emotional gas pedal, right? Now you don't want to be around me, and this type of thing like that. And it decouples the relationship between our emotional center and our logic center, so we are just nothing but a bag of emotions. Generally speaking, that's not a good thing, and this type of thing. So the emotional recalibration that takes place at night again, when you go into the deep sleep, is really, really important in terms of our mood and our balance and our rationality and being decent people. Like that, because otherwise we are just way over on the emotional side of things and this kind of stuff like that, and we don't think clearly. So again, that deep sleep in the first 3 phases is really important here. So what are we going to do about it, right? How do we create the best version of ourselves? Well, it starts with understanding what the common sleep disruptors are. And if we look at this list here, there's a whole host of things. But the good news is most of them are modifiable. We can change them if we want. Caffeine, alcohol, stress, eating late and eating the wrong foods, too much technology before and in bed. And I've talked to some of you, right, who've already admitted that that's what you do. Like that, kids and pets in bed. Who sleeps with their kids or sleeps with their pets? Huh? It's a dog's world out there, right? Right that? And we're paying the price, right? Like that. We're grumpy because of it. And stuff like that. Too many light-emitting devices in the bedroom. Looking at the clock if we wake up during the night. Does anybody look up in the middle of the night and they kind of look at the clock and they go, oh, good God, not again. Right? Why do you do that? Why did they call it an alarm clock? Who wants to get alarmed first thing in the morning? That's pathetic, right? They should have called it something other than that. Like that. Exercising later at night may not be ideal. Keeping the room too warm, starting the day on the wrong foot. Maybe we should get up and slow versus get up and go, and this type of thing. Napping if you're having trouble with sleep, and restless spouses or partners. Does that happen, right? I think if I look at the vintage here, it has to be happening, and this kind of stuff in this room, okay? That. So then the thing is, what do we do? Okay, what are we going to look at? Let's look at a couple of the key things that really seem to be popping up in the conversations. When I work with executive forums and with business leaders and a lot of our clients, when we're just talking about that, these are some of the things that come up all the time. So we'll kind of cut to the chase, cut to the quick, and talk about some of the more common ones. Let's start with breakfast, because we have already recognized that the sleep problems start when we take our head off the pillow, not when we put it on the pillow. So what are we going to do right from the get-go? And this is really about creating therapeutic lifestyle choices throughout the day that culminate with great sleep. Okay? So breakfast. First thing you want to do is you want to have breakfast at least within 30 to 45 minutes of getting up. There's a hormone called cortisol. Have you heard of cortisol? Cortisol is often referred to as the fight or flight hormone. Sometimes it's called the scarcity hormone. Fight or flight is because you need something like that to go coursing through your body to get your heart pumping and your muscles moving, all that kind of stuff, because there's a saber-toothed tiger, right? Well, there's not many of them left, right? So we should get that in check. And the other thing is, if we don't eat something within half an hour of getting up, that cortisol level is still coming up, still coming up, because now your body is saying, I'm hungry, we need food, we got to go hunting, we got to do something, you got to get busy, you got to do this stuff. So the cortisol level keeps coming up, and this kind of stuff. So what we want to do is we want to have a little bit of food first thing in the morning, limited sugars. Fruit is good, but just don't have a breakfast of fruit because it's loaded with sugars and this type of thing. So get a little bit of protein in there, get some limited sugars, get something with some low glycemic index and whatnot, and really, breakfast is probably your most important meal of the day. So have something there. This behavior sets your hormonal cycles for the day, right? Now, we're starting from a good place versus, right, a McCafe and a bagel, right? That's not a great way to start, or a coffee to start like that, and you enjoy it within waking up. The other thing I probably should have added in here is have a really good glass of water. People are not aware of the fact that just even in your breath, you lose about 1 liter of water a night breathing, right? And then you got a full bladder, right? So you got another ½ liter there. So you got about 1.5 liters that you've taken out of your system. So you wake up and quite frankly, you're semi-dehydrated. So the first thing you want to do is get some water in there. Get this system going. Get it flushing in this thing. Have a good glass of water. Have a breakfast, within 30 to 45 minutes of getting up and get going. Okay? From a meal perspective, our dietitians and nutritionists will often talk about the fact that for breakfast, eat like a king, right? For lunch, eat like a prince, and for dinner, eat like a pauper, and this type of thing. Someone years ago said steak and eggs for breakfast. They were right? Get your protein, get your load in. That should be our base. We got things ass backwards, right? Because we grab a coffee on the go in the morning. We have a little something like that. We go and we load up with carbs at lunch, this kind of stuff, and then we eat our biggest meal in the evening, late in the evening, by the way, and this kind of stuff, when we're going to be least active, right? That's not a good recipe if you want to fuel your body for performance, that kind of stuff, okay? So meals, try to eat at least 3 hours before your bedtime to allow your metabolic system time to process the food. So you're saying 7 o'clock, right? Now, if you're going to go to bed at 10 o'clock, regularly and stuff like that, you're eating at 7 o'clock, that's good, because the last thing that you want is your metabolic machinery to start redlining when it's time to go to bed. That doesn't work very well. And what you eat also has a dramatic impact on your hormonal levels and subsequently on your sleep and energy levels. So to eat a high-carb dinner later at night and then to talk about sleep problems the next day, too bad, so sad, right? You did it to yourself and this type of thing, right? Fewer carbs in the second half of the day is generally good practice. Now, there's a caveat here. If you eat at 7 o'clock and you eat the proper kind of meal, low-carb meal and stuff like that, some people will actually wake up at about 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning a little bit because their brain is starving. Our brains run on glucose and this kind of stuff. So you may need a little bit of a snack. If you're going to get that discipline, you might need a snack at a little bit about 9:30 to just get a little bit of carbs, get a little bit of yogurt into you, have a banana, have some milk or something like that, just to give yourself a little bit of extra sugar so that your brain doesn't start to starve at about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and wake you up, because it's a survival instinct. It will wake you up. Okay? Caffeine. Anybody here? Right? Caffeine-aholic and this kind of stuff. So caffeine is one of the most significant sleep disruptors that there is out there right now. So we really encourage individuals to eliminate, decrease, or selectively consume caffeine. So the basic rule here is if you're having a real problem with sleep, you got to eliminate it. If you're kind of having problems with sleep sometimes, well then, decrease it like that. And if you could sleep with a train running right past your head, well then I don't drink 40 gallons of it. I don't really care, and this kind of stuff. So all of this stuff needs to be weighted and mediated based on how much problem you're having with sleep, okay? It's the most well-known sleep disruptor as it is a stimulant and it blocks melatonin production. So we have another hormone in our bodies called adenosine. And throughout the day and stuff like that, the adenosine production goes up and goes up and goes up, and we build what's called sleep pressure or sleep drive. And as adenosine levels go up, they lock onto these receptors. And once enough adenosine receptors have adenosine locked onto them, it triggers the melatonin production cycle to start. So what caffeine does, it's almost indistinguishable from adenosine in terms of its molecular structure, so it locks onto the adenosine receptors and blocks those receptors so adenosine can't get in there and you can't start your melatonin production. Okay? So that's how caffeine interrupts that. Caffeine has a half-life of 6 to 8 hours. So half-life means if we take any drug or any substance, they typically clear from our body in 5 half-lives. So if I drink, and it's got 100 milligrams of caffeine, and I drink it at 2 o'clock, at 10 o'clock, right, now I've got 50 milligrams still left in my body. Only half is cleared. Okay, so at 10 o'clock, that kind of stuff. By 6 a.m., I have 25 milligrams left in there. So it takes 5 half-lives for a substance and a drug to fully clear. So if you drink coffee after 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and you're having problems sleeping, well, it's no wonder, right? Because you've almost completely blocked your adenosine receptor sites, and you've shut down your melatonin production, right? And melatonin being your sleep hormone. So again, we really encourage people actually to shut her down, before noon if you can. Now, if you can sleep, I know people that they drink the strongest coffee like crazy at night, and they sleep like unbelievably well. And I go, good on you, right? Whatever, and this kind of stuff. But again, if you're having fragmented and suboptimal sleep, I think caffeine is a big one. You got to look at your Red Bull, because a lot of people, they get into this cycle where they didn't sleep well, so they start in the morning with lots of caffeine. They just load it right in. Have a high-carb lunch, have a Red Bull in the afternoon, like that, and then I got to take my sleeping pills at night. Well, I took my sleeping pills at night, so I didn't sleep that well, so I woke up in the morning groggy, so I had a great big coffee, right, that, and I had a high-carb lunch, and then I had a Red Bull for afternoon, like that, and on it goes, and this kind of stuff. You can break the cycle, but you have to make those choices to want to do it. Okay, so selective use in the morning can be okay, like that. If you got a big presentation and you got to be on, like Karen is on, and that kind of stuff, use it selectively to jack yourself up. Go for it, and this kind of stuff. But don't let it be your crutch, your daily crutch, right? You shouldn't be self-medicating with caffeine. What we don't want. Okay, so it's in a lot of soft drinks. Chocolate's not that big of a deal, but the energy drinks have become a real problem with respect to caffeine. Okay, number one sleep disruptor. Technology. Okay, so what we'd really ask you to do is to create an electronic sundown 1 hour before bedtime. So if your bedtime is at 10 o'clock, then you need to, start at least by 9 o'clock. The caveat here is, okay, so we want a technology sundown because the blue light from our phones and our TVs and our laptops does what? Right? We talked about what light does for us as animals. And yeah, I haven't met most of you, but there's probably a few animals in the room. It suppresses your melatonin production. Okay? So again, if you're having a tough time sleeping, this is a tool that you can use. So you start creating that electronic sundown. For business people that are doing their emails at night, and they get an email and they go, good God, I told them, and this kind of stuff, you get all jacked up again. So you want to look at not just the blue light that's coming from it, but sometimes the content. And if you're going to be reading emails from work and it's going to get you ripped, like that kind of content, so now you need a 2-hour thing like that, because as soon as you get that and your amygdala gets hijacked and stuff, your cortisol levels go like this, and that hammers your melatonin right down like that, and now you're just bug-eyed and like this. So you got to look at not just the use of technology, but you have to also look at the content of what you're receiving from that technology. The interesting thing here is blue light from electronic devices suppress our melatonin production, and the stimulation that we get from the device content can increase our cortisol levels. So they've done a study, and they've looked at, so who here has a TV in their room? Come on, be honest, right? or a laptop and this kind of stuff. And even you have the alarm clocks with the red lights on there. They have done a study, and they've shown that even if you have those little blue lights and stuff like that, it's affecting your melatonin production, because they now realize that we have photoreceptors on our skin. So even though your eyes are closed, like this, and they've done a study, would put someone in a completely black room and tape the little light behind their knee, under the blankets, their melatonin production dropped 40%. Okay? So this invasion of technology in our bedrooms is one of the real massive problems that we have and is causing a sleep-deprived society. Like that. So technology, again, is really a big issue in terms of causing sleep disruption. Manage it accordingly based on what your sleep patterns are and what your sleep goals are. Okay? So bedtime. Set your day to result in a regular bedtime and honor this time. We are creatures of habit. Our bodies like habit. Our circadian rhythm is pretty much set like that. So if you can respect that rhythm, then you will just sleep a lot better. Your bedtime should be set using your regular wake-up time. So when do I set my bedtime? Well, if you wake up consistently at 6 o'clock like I do, then I just count back 7.5 to 8 hours, and I should be going to bed at 10 o'clock, right? So then I need to start my go-to-bed routine an hour and a half before 10 o'clock, so I sleep like a baby, right? I mentioned to some of you, my grandson, he's 2.5 years old, my granddaughter, 6 months old. My daughter is religious with the bedtime. They finish their dinner by 6 o'clock. They're in a nice warm bath by 7. They're in their onesie by 7:20, right? They have a nice little snack, and then they're getting snuggled. They read them a book, and they put them in bed, and they sleep like a baby. But that's every single night. They do that. We are really, really good with routine. If we want to have good sleep hygiene, you need to have routine, this type of thing. And you should wake up the same time on the weekends as you do during the week, this kind of stuff. Now, there's the difference between the ideal world and the real world. We're massaging the gap there, right? So you got to let loose sometimes. Go for it, this kind of stuff. Nobody here is a saint, right? And I'm not sure any of us are in line to be the Pope, this kind of stuff, so we're going to have our little indiscretions every now and then, right? You want the neuropsychological association an hour and a half before we get ready for bed. I'm going into my routine. My brain starts thinking, okay, the mindfulness stuff Karen talked about, start doing that because now our body starts to physiologically make adjustments because it gets to go to bed, and this type of thing. Program yourself that way, right? And I hear often that people will kind of go, oh, when we do daylight saving times, they said, I'm just bagged the next day. Man, I can't believe it. We got to stop doing this. I'm just absolutely bagged. And I say, well, do you go to bed the same time every night? Well, no. Sometimes 10 o'clock, sometimes 11 o'clock, that kind of stuff. Did you know that if you usually go to bed at 10 o'clock and then all of a sudden you go to bed at 11 o'clock one night, that's no different than 1 hour of jet lag? This is what you've done to your circadian rhythm, your body. You've done that. So I go to those people that kind of go this whole thing about daylight saving times. I go, liar, liar, pants on fire. That's a pile of crap, right? Because you don't have a regular bedtime anyhow. So how come you're not saying the same thing every other day of the week? When you jack around and you play hockey at 10 o'clock, you got ice time at 10 o'clock, and then you have 4 Molson Canadian, and then you come home, you don't talk about it then, right? So come on, you guys, right? Let's get on there like that. So part of my job here tonight is really to put the cowboy boot between your cheeks and get you moving and thinking differently, right? Because we need to sleep, okay? So the bedroom, hate to break it to you, but there's only 2 things that should happen in the bedroom, right? Like that, it should be completely dark, technology, kid and pet free, like that. Air should be about 16 to 18 degrees and only used for sleep and intimacy. Only used for sleep and intimacy. That's part of the neuropsychological training that you want to do. You want to go in there and you want your body to understand that when I go in there like that we're not playing backgammon and this kind of stuff like that, and we're not doing all these other types of things. The reason why 16 to 18 degrees is because when our bodies get ready for sleep like that, there's a thermoregulatory process that kicks in and our bodies actually drop 2 degrees in temperature. Like that. So if you keep it too warm and you prevent your body from dropping those 2 degrees in temperature, you'll have a much more difficult time inducing sleep. This kind of stuff, right? So you want to drop there, and people say, I love sleeping with the window open. Well, there's a reason why, right? It allows your body to drop in temperature, right? There could be some noise things. Things to consider, separate beds. When I grew up, maybe I haven't, my wife says I haven't yet, this type of thing, like that, it was, if you are married and you have a good relationship, you sleep together. Because that's what lovingly couples do, and this kind of stuff. And then I hurt my back water skiing, doing stupid things that I shouldn't be doing with my kids. And my wife goes through menopause and that kind of stuff, and she's tossing and turning and flipping the blankets all over the place and this kind of stuff. So how lovingly is that I've hurt myself doing something silly, and I'm turning into, and like I'm on a rotisserie all night long there, and she can't sleep, right? So I think we need to kind of break that a little bit, and I would submit that if one of us is having a challenge getting really, really good sleep, that maybe we go to bed at the same time, we do a little bit of talking, we review the day. If you have intimacy, you have intimacy, and then when you go to turn the lights out, one of you goes to another room, right? Now, if I'm going to be on a rotisserie, at least Jackie gets a good sleep. I'm not penalizing her for what I've done, and this kind of stuff. We got an unbelievable marriage. We've been married for 36 years, and I'm good with that. This kind of stuff like that, because I think it's more lovingly for me to move myself and let her create the best version of her than keeping her up all night long. Just saying, right? So, and if you have some issues, again, from my water ski days, like my elbow aches all the time, so I put some Voltaren and Emugel, I put something on there, so I manage it proactively because it'll snap, crackle, and pop all night long, and this type of thing. And she says, oh, Jesus, sometimes it's like someone fired a gun, right? And I'm just straightening my elbow out, this type of thing. So I manage my pains and my aches and that kind of stuff, so it doesn't keep me up, and it doesn't keep her up, okay? So you got to be a little bit proactive with this. Uh-oh, here we go, right? Okay, good. Alcohol. What are we going to do about alcohol? And this type of thing. Alcohol does not help you sleep. It's a sedative. When they look at the brain waves of people that have slept, it's exactly the same as people that have anesthesia when they're getting surgery and this kind of stuff. So it depresses your central nervous system like that. And then what happens is when the half-life wears out a little bit, you get this rebound awakening, and you don't get the deep sleep. So when you get this awakening, actually you wake right up. And then you probably got to go pee, right? Because you've drank so much the night before. So, and you get all these things, and it really suppresses your REM sleep and this type of thing. The quality of sleep with alcohol is usually not good at all. And if there's one thing that I hear, like people, and I talked to some people in the audience tonight, they said that when I drink, I know I'm not going to sleep well. So we understand our bodies, and we do it anyhow. So we still rationalize stuff, and that's okay. If you're good with the consequences, then that's good. But if we want to have better sleep, then we need to change. This type of thing. So alcohol can be a real disruptor of sleep. And metabolically, for us guys, when we hit about 45 years of age and women about 50 years of age, our metabolic engines shift a little bit. We can't eat what we used to. Our tolerance for alcohol will often drop and this type of thing. And so if we don't adjust our consumption accordingly, we're going to have more sleep disruption. Okay? And napping. The general rule of napping is if you sleep really well, nap whenever you want. It doesn't really matter. But if you're having problems with sleep, then you want to avoid napping because you want to build this sleep pressure and this sleep drive throughout the day. And if you nap, you disrupt that sleep pressure, sleep drive cycle and this kind of stuff, and you'll make it more difficult to sleep. So be careful about napping. And again, they even say with napping, if you're going to nap and stuff like that, around noon, early afternoon is probably best because, again, if you nap too late, if you fall asleep watching the 6 o'clock news, you'll probably decrease your sleep pressure and your sleep drive for the night, okay? So manage it, accordingly, right, And then what about sleeping pills? Oh, boy, right, this is a big one here. There's a difference between insomnia and sleep deprivation. Insomnia is not a diagnosis, by the way, it's a symptom. Insomnia, not sleeping, is a symptom, generally speaking. It's not a diagnosis. And sleep deprivation is something like you're a shift worker, and I'm just bad because I'm not getting any sleep. It's when I get the chance to sleep, I do sleep, but sleep deprivation is I don't get the chance to sleep, right? The sleeping pills are okay for a short period of time. It's more for periodic use or episodic use and stuff. Acute stressful situations, unique sleeping environments that make sleep difficult, like shift work and that kind of stuff, and jet lag. Again, these sleeping pills act on the same receptors as alcohol, so they induce sedation, not sleep, and this type of thing. There's some real concerns about the longer-term impacts of these medications on your cognition and whether it's going to cause cognitive decline. Part of it is because you're not getting deep sleep, so what appliance is not kicking in? Your cerebral dishwasher and this kind of stuff, so you're not getting the purging that you want. So we have to be very, very careful with these. They have to be used very, very selectively, and you don't want to be on them long-term, generally speaking. Okay? Now, there are exceptions to every rule like that. You got to talk to your doctor, and you got to see if you are one of those exceptions. If you're interested in reading more about sleep, there's a lot of literature out there right now. Here is 6 different books that I've recommended to a number of people. out there. And if you want these titles, we can certainly give them to you. I would say that the one in the top right-hand corner, Sleep Smarter, is probably a great place to start. The Sleep Revolution by Arianna Huffington, top middle, is probably another really, really good one. A couple of them, Fast Asleep, Wide Awake, and The Sleep Solution are very scientific. They get into the science of sleep a lot more and that type of thing. So you may not want to start there unless you have a clinically orientated mind and whatnot. And then Why We Sleep, Dr. Matthew Walker, is quite good. There's another app out there. So Dr. McNeil talked about Headspace for mindfulness, which I really, really believe in. Who here has heard of the app Calm? Yeah, have you used it? Have you found it effective, Elizabeth? Yeah, so Calm is a really, really cool one because you can go in there and there's kind of different sounds, calming sounds, kind of the white noise sounds and stuff like that. But there's a part to it about bedtime stories and this kind of stuff. So you put it on and this individual, this lady will read you a bedtime story. She has this monotonal voice, this kind of stuff, and this story is so bloody boring like that. It's unbelievable how it induces sleep. And bam, I've heard more people use it, and I used it myself for a lot of that. Holy God, it's boring, like that, but it works, hey, like that. It's kind of like Buckley's, right? It tastes awful, but it works. This one is so boring and it works, this kind of stuff. So there's a lot of good resources out there. If you are having a lot of problems sleeping and you haven't slept really, really well for 3 to 6 months and that kind of stuff, get some help and this kind of stuff. Hopefully tonight we've made the case for the value of sleep, and it's a thing that you have to prioritize in your life. If you want to live long and be healthy and be happy and be around to hang out with the loved ones that you have in your life and stuff like that, you got to sleep like that. If you don't, there's a price to pay. So with this knowledge, I wish you all the best of sleep. Yeah, happy Z's.